Edwin wasn't sure what he expected when he arrived at the crash site. An alien pod, destroyed and scattered across the barren landscape, wasn't an uncommon sight in these parts, but what he found inside was far from routine. Amid the wreckage, there she was, a girl, but not like any human girl he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered with a silvery sheen, an otherworldly glow that reflected the dim light of the damaged pod. Her eyes, glowing faintly in the dark, met his with a steady intensity. He had been trained to approach situations like this with caution. She was an alien, dangerous by default. But the moment their gazes locked, something inside him shifted. There was no fear in her eyes, no sign of panic or desperation. She was still, almost serene, as if she had expected him all along. Edwin's pulse quickened. He didn't know why. He should have been thinking about the mission, rescue her, bring her back, and assess the threat. But the way she looked at him, with such confidence and calm, made it impossible to focus on anything else. He took a cautious step forward. "Are you okay?" The words sounded awkward, even to his own ears. He should have asked something more professional, something more detached, but instead it came out like a question he wasn't ready to answer himself. She didn't answer right away, just continued to study him. Her lips quirked slightly, a subtle curve that seemed to suggest something more than just a lack of response. It was almost as if she was amused by him, or perhaps she was simply watching to see what he would do next. The silence stretched between them, thick with an unspoken understanding. He found himself caught in the intensity of her stare, unable to look away. Every instinct told him to retreat, to take control of the situation. But there was something about her, something that made him want to stay, to learn more. Her voice broke the stillness, quiet and smooth. "Emery," she said, as though offering it like a gift. A name. Edwin's breath caught in his throat. The way she said it, soft and purposeful, sent a strange jolt through him. He wasn't sure if it was the name itself or the way she said it, but it felt significant. "Important." "Emery," he repeated, testing the sound of it on his lips. Her name felt foreign yet oddly familiar. The way it lingered in the air between them made him feel like something had shifted, like the world had somehow changed its course. She didn't move, didn't even blink, but the air around them seemed to thrum with tension. It wasn't the tension of danger or fear, but something deeper, something more complicated, something he didn't fully understand, but couldn't ignore. Emery tilted her head slightly, watching him. Her eyes never wavered from his, the unspoken challenge between them growing more palpable by the second. She wasn't just looking at him. She was studying him, probing him in a way that made his heart beat a little faster. He should have said something, should have asked more questions, made her feel less like an enigma. But there was a strange stillness in the moment, a quiet understanding that neither of them needed to break just yet. "Are you?" He hesitated, unsure how to phrase the question. "Are you a prisoner?" He wasn't sure what he expected her answer to be, but it certainly wasn't the slow, knowing smile that played at the corner of her lips. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "You could say that," she said, her voice smooth, almost teasing, "but I don't think you're the one in control here." The words hung in the air like a challenge, daring him to accept it, to understand that things were not as simple as they seemed. Edwin stood there, frozen, his mind racing. He had come here to find answers, to follow orders, but all he could think about now was her. This strange, beautiful alien with eyes that seemed to see right through him. He couldn't explain it, but it felt like his entire world had shifted. With that one moment, whatever he had expected from this mission, it had just changed. And now, he didn't know what to do next. Edwin couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, like an invisible thread pulling tighter with every passing second. He didn't know why. He barely knew her, this alien girl who had crashed onto his planet. And yet, the quiet intensity in her gaze unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. As he stood in front of her, unsure whether to keep his distance or to approach her more closely, Emery's eyes remained steady. Her silence was not passive. It was deliberate. She was studying him, measuring him in a way that felt almost possessive, but with a calm precision, as though she could read every thought racing through his mind. Edvin's pulse thrummed in his ears. What was he supposed to do? What was she expecting of him? "You don't need to be afraid of me," Emery said softly, her voice like a gentle breeze across his skin. The words were almost too quiet to hear, but they sent a shiver down his spine. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She wasn't seeking anything from him except maybe understanding. He found himself mesmerized by the way she spoke. There was something soothing in her tone, yet a quiet power behind it. "I'm not afraid," he replied, though it wasn't entirely true. He wasn't afraid of her, but he was afraid of the way she made him feel, the way she made him question everything he thought. He knew about himself, about his mission, and about the world he lived in. Emery's lips parted slightly, a faint smirk playing on her features, as if she knew the effect she had on him. It wasn't just her alien beauty that was captivating. It was the air of command that surrounded her, the subtle way she held herself, even in chains. She wasn't just waiting for someone to free her. She was waiting for something more, something he didn't know if he was ready to give. His mind raced, but the moment she tilted her head, her silvery eyes narrowing in an almost playful way, he knew she was reading him, sensing the conflict. Inside him. "You don't belong here," she said, her voice low, almost teasing. "Not like this." Edvin swallowed hard, uncertain of how to respond. He wanted to deny it, wanted to explain the logic behind his actions, his duty to bring her in, to follow orders. But the words felt empty in his mouth, meaningless. It was as if her presence had shattered the world he'd always known, revealing something he couldn't ignore. "You're right," he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "I don't belong here. Not like this. But I can't just walk away either." Emery's gaze softened for a moment, a flicker of something vulnerable flashing across her features before it was replaced by that same calm, guarded expression. "Then you're trapped," she said, her voice laced with both certainty and a hint of sadness. Edvin took a step forward, his chest tight with an unfamiliar emotion. Was it fear or something else? He wasn't sure, but he was certain of one thing. This, whatever this connection was, wasn't going to fade. Not now, not after the look she had given him. He didn't know if she was a prisoner or if she was playing a game, but whatever it was, he couldn't turn his back on her. "Emery." He said her name again, testing it out like a question, like an invitation. His voice was softer this time, gentler. He was no longer just speaking to an alien prisoner. She was something more to him now. Something that made him want to know her, to understand her. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, there was no hostility, no challenge. Just quiet understanding, a mutual acknowledgement that they both felt something they couldn't explain. "You're a fool if you think you can save me," she said, her tone teasing. But there was an underlying sincerity to it. Edvin chuckled softly, a bitter edge to the sound. "I'm not here to save you," he said. "I don't even know if I can. But I don't want to leave you here, like this. Not anymore." There was a long pause, a moment when neither of them moved, but the air between them felt charged, like it was heavy with words that hadn't been spoken. Finally, Emery let out a quiet sigh, her gaze flickering down to the chains around her wrists, and then back up to meet his. "You're not the one who needs saving," she said quietly. "But you're the one who will end up needing me." Edvin's breath caught in his throat. The weight of her words hung in the air like a promise, and in that moment he understood. He wasn't the one meant to rescue her. He wasn't the one in control anymore, and for reasons he couldn't understand, he found himself willing to surrender to whatever was between them. Edvin couldn't shake the feeling that he was teetering on the edge of something dangerous and thrilling, something that made his heart beat faster every time their eyes met. He had come here with a mission, but now that he was standing before Emery, he wasn't sure if he even remembered what that mission was anymore. Emery stood motionless, her expression unreadable, yet her eyes flickered with a deep, knowing light. She was always watching him, as if she were silently assessing every move, every word he spoke. There was an undeniable magnetism to her, something both mysterious and alluring, something that seemed to draw him in despite his best efforts to resist. "Why are you still here, Edvin?" Her voice was quiet but steady, carrying a weight to it that made him pause. "You could walk away. This mission doesn't have to mean anything. You could leave, and I would just be another casualty in your war." Instead of anger or frustration, it was a deep, gut-wrenching realization that hit him hard. She was right. She wasn't just a prisoner to be rescued, a part of the mission. She was an enigma, something entirely different, and his involvement in her life was no longer just about duty. "I can't walk away," Edvin said quietly, almost to himself. "I don't know what it is, but something about you. I can't turn my back on it." Emery's lips twitched upward at the corners, a smile so faint it was almost a secret. "And yet you're so determined to save me. What do you think you're saving me from, Edvin? My chains?" She glanced down at the metal cuffs around her wrists, the heavy links gleaming in the low light. "Or are you saving yourself?" Edvin felt a surge of frustration, but tried to keep his expression neutral. She was toying with him again, speaking in riddles, challenging him without saying a word. The teasing smile that danced on her lips made it hard to think clearly. His pulse throbbed in his temples as his emotions tangled. Did she see him as weak? Did she think he was incapable of understanding the depths of his own feelings? He stepped closer, closing the distance between them, and her gaze flickered, unreadable. Her eyes held the same knowing look, but there was something else there, something softer. For the briefest moment, Edvin caught a glimpse of something raw in her expression, as if she were on the edge of breaking something open. But then it was gone. "I'm not trying to save you from anything, Emery," he murmured, his voice low and steady. "I'm trying to understand you. And maybe I want to see where this goes." She said nothing, but the air around them thickened with an unspoken understanding. There was no more teasing, no more games. For the first time, Edvin could see the depth behind her eyes, the vulnerability that she kept hidden beneath layers of strength and control. "You're so sure of yourself, aren't you?" she said quietly, her voice tinged with a softness that sent a shiver through him. "But this, whatever it is, it's dangerous, Edvin. You don't know what you're dealing with." He reached out, his hand hovering just inches from her wrist, where the chains held her captive. His fingers brushed lightly against her skin, and a tremor ran through her. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into the touch, her breath hitching slightly, as though the contact stirred something deep within her. "Maybe I'm not sure of everything," Edvin admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I want to understand you, Emery. I want to know why you're so different, why you make me feel this way. I want to know why I can't walk away." Her eyes softened at his words, but only for a moment. Then, as if steeling herself, she looked away, focusing on the darkened landscape outside the broken pod. "You don't know me, Edvin," she said, quietly. "You don't know what it means to be me." The vulnerability in her voice pulled at him, but he held his ground. "I'm willing to learn," he said. "I want to learn." There was a long pause as she seemed to weigh his words. Her gaze met his once more, and this time, the challenge in her eyes had softened into something else. Something more tender, though she still kept her guard up. "Maybe," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "But remember, Edvin, I'm not like you, and I can't promise that I won't change everything you thought you knew." For a moment, Edvin couldn't speak. The weight of her words pressed down on him, yet somehow he felt lighter, as if a small but crucial part of him had unlocked. This wasn't just about them being from different species. This wasn't just about duty or honor, and despite the uncertainty, despite the danger, Edvin knew one thing for sure: he couldn't walk away. Not now, not after everything that had already passed between them. "Then don't promise," he whispered. "Let's just see where this goes." The moments between them had become more than mere words. They were charged with an intensity that neither could ignore. Edvin had expected to feel uncertain, perhaps even regretful, but instead, the closer he drew to Emery, the more he felt himself unraveling in ways he never anticipated. It wasn't just physical. It was the emotional weight, the strange pull of her presence that lingered long after their encounters. He couldn't deny it. He was starting to care for her. Emery, on the other hand, seemed to be fighting her own battle. There were flashes of warmth in her gaze when she looked at him, moments when she almost seemed to let go, as if inviting him to see the part of her she had carefully guarded. But just as quickly as it came, the mask would fall back into place. The walls she'd built to protect herself from the universe were not so easily breached. "Why do you keep doing this?" Emery asked, her voice a mixture of frustration and something else, something softer. She sat near the small window of the pod, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her silhouette was bathed in the pale light of the distant stars, but the sharpness in her features was still evident. It was as though she was daring him to approach, yet warning him away at the same time. Edvin stepped closer, his gaze fixed on her, unable to look away. "What do you mean?" His voice was low, edged with the intensity of everything that had been left unsaid between them. You think you can save me, don't you?" Emery's words hung in the air, bitter, but honest. She didn't look at him, but he could see the way her jaw tightened. There was a vulnerability in her tone, a rawness that made something inside him ache. "I'm not trying to save you," Edvin responded, sitting down beside her, keeping a respectful distance, though the pull to be closer to her was undeniable. "But I can't walk away, Emery. Not when I'm starting to understand who you really are." Her eyes flickered toward him, those iridescent, silvery depths, betraying an emotion she wasn't ready to express. "You don't know me," she whispered. "You don't know what it's like to be me." Edvin's heart tightened, the words hitting harder than he'd anticipated. He reached out, his fingers brushing against hers, tentative, unsure if she would allow it. She didn't pull away, though she didn't move closer either. But it was enough. Enough to show him that the distance between them wasn't just physical. "I don't know everything," Edvin said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "But I want to. I want to learn, Emery. I'm not afraid of what you've been through. I'm not afraid of who you are." Her eyes widened slightly, as if his words struck something deep within her. For a long moment she said nothing, the silence between them thick with unspoken thoughts. Then, with a sharp breath, she finally spoke, her voice softer now, more vulnerable. "You think it's that easy?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "That we can just forget who we are? That you can touch me, talk to me, and somehow change everything?" Edvin shook his head, the words coming out before he even thought. "No, I don't expect that. But I can't pretend that this doesn't matter, that you don't matter." The weight of her silence pressed down on him as she closed her eyes, her long lashes brushing against her cheeks. When she opened them again, there was a flicker of something deeper, something more real, that she couldn't hide. Why? "Is it so easy for you?" Emery asked, almost inaudible, but Edvin heard it clearly. "Why do you make me want to be seen? Why do you make me feel things I don't want to feel?" Edvin's heart stuttered at her admission, and his hand, without thinking, moved to gently cup her chin, guiding her face toward his. There was no arrogance in his touch, no desire to claim. It was simply an invitation, an offering. "You can fight it," he said, his voice low, his breath steady but quickening with each second they spent in each other's presence. "You can hide behind your walls and tell yourself that I don't understand. But I do. I feel it too, Emery. The way you make me want to stay. The way I can't shake you off no matter how hard I try." Her eyes softened, but the vulnerability was still there, raw and exposed. "This doesn't end well for you," she murmured. "You don't understand. I don't know how to be anything but this, a weapon, a thing to be used." Edvin's chest tightened, the weight of her words pulling at him. "You're not a thing," he whispered fiercely, his thumb brushing the soft skin of her cheek. "You're a person, and you deserve more than that." Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at him, something flickering in her gaze, something unreadable. For a moment, everything seemed to pause. The universe around them seemed to hold its breath as if waiting for them to make the choice that had already been made, even if neither of them wanted to admit it. "Maybe," Emery whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and fear. "Maybe I don't know how to let someone in. Maybe I don't know what it means to want someone like you." Edvin leaned closer, his breath mingling with hers, the tension between them almost unbearable. "Then let me show you." She didn't pull away, but she didn't come closer either. She simply allowed the moment to hang between them, a silent promise of something they couldn't yet name, but both felt. "I'm not going anywhere," Edvin said softly, "and I'm not leaving you behind." For the first time, Emery's guarded expression faltered, just slightly. And for a fleeting moment, Edvin saw the girl she kept hidden behind those walls, fragile, unsure, and longing for something she couldn't bring herself to accept. Emery's breath caught in her throat as Edvin's words lingered in the air, their weight settling between them like an unspoken promise. The tension that had been building for days, months even, now threatened to burst, filling the space between them with an intensity neither could escape. And yet, even in the face of this overwhelming pull, they remained rooted in their hesitation, afraid, unsure of what this connection might ultimately mean. Edvin reached out again, this time with more certainty, his hand grazing the side of her face. His touch was gentle but firm, as if he were testing the waters, unsure if she would let him get closer or pull away. "Emery," he whispered, his voice soft, almost pleading, "please, I need you to trust me." Her eyes flickered, and for a moment, there was a crack in the armor she had carefully built around herself. The cool, distant alien who had come into his life with fire in her eyes was slipping away, replaced by a woman who seemed vulnerable, fragile, and afraid of the very thing she craved. "I don't know if I can," she murmured, her voice barely audible, as if the admission were a secret she had kept hidden for far too long. "I don't know how to trust anyone, not after everything I've been through." Edvin's heart clenched. He had heard her pain in every word she said, in every action she took. She was still the product of her past, a past that had forced her to become a weapon, a tool to be used and discarded. He had never truly understood the weight of that, until now. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, his voice low and steady. "I'm not like the others who treated you like an object. I see you, Emery, all of you." Her gaze softened at his words, though doubt still lingered behind her eyes. There was a quiet sadness in the way she looked at him, as though she was already preparing for the moment he would leave. But Edvin wasn't going anywhere. He had made up his mind. "I don't know how to let someone in," Emery confessed, her voice trembling with the weight of her vulnerability. "I've spent so long keeping everyone out that now I'm afraid. Afraid of what I might feel. Afraid of what I might lose." Edvin's heart ached for her, the rawness of her words tearing through him. She wasn't just a soldier, a slave, a weapon. She was a woman who had been broken and rebuilt so many times, her soul scarred by the demands of others. He wanted to be the one to heal her, to show her that she could be more than what the galaxy had made her. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm not going anywhere, Emery. You don't have to be afraid of feeling something for me. I want to help you, not hurt you." Her eyes closed at his touch, the moment hanging in the air like a fragile thread. When she opened them again, there was something new in her gaze, something tentative, something that almost looked like hope. But it was fleeting, as if she were still unsure whether to believe in it. "I don't know if I can be what you want," Emery said, her voice almost a whisper. "I don't know if I can be me around you. Not after everything." Edvin shook his head, his thumb tracing the delicate line of her jaw. "You don't have to be anything other than yourself," he said softly. "I don't want to change you. I just want you to let me in. Let me see you." She inhaled sharply, as if his words had struck a chord deep within her. She looked away for a moment, her thoughts clearly racing, before finally meeting his gaze. Again, there was a moment of stillness, a pause that seemed to stretch for eternity. And then slowly, she reached out, her hand brushing against his chest. Her touch was light, almost tentative, but it was enough to make his heart race. He didn't move, didn't dare to breathe, as she let her fingers linger against him. "Don't know how to do this," Emery said, her voice fragile and uncertain. "I don't know how to be close to someone without fearing that I'll break them." Edvin's heart skipped a beat, the fear in her voice, the weight of her words. It was all too familiar. He had known that this would be difficult, that their differences would create barriers they might never fully overcome, but he also knew that whatever fear she had, he would face it with her. "You won't break me, Emery," he said, his voice steady and sure. "I promise you, I won't leave. I'm not going anywhere." Emery's lips parted, as though she were about to say something, but the words seemed to falter, caught somewhere between fear and longing. And then, before Edvin could say anything more, she leaned in just slightly, her breath warm against his skin. The space between them closed, her hand resting firmly against his chest now, as if she were grounding herself. "I don't know if I can trust you completely," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I think I might want to try." The weight of her admission hung in the air, and Edvin's heart soared. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Enough to prove that they were on the same path, even if it was just the beginning. "I'll wait for you," he said softly. "No matter how long it takes, I'll wait for you to trust me." She didn't respond with words, but when she pressed her forehead to his, the closeness between them said everything that needed to be said. In that moment, they were no longer two different species, two people from entirely different worlds. They were simply Edvin and Emery, two souls entwining in a dance of emotions neither of them fully understood, but both willing to explore. And for the first time, Emery felt something she had long since given up on: hope. The future, uncertain as it was, suddenly didn't seem so daunting when Edvin was by her side. Maybe they didn't have all the answers. Maybe they never would. But for now, they had each other, and that, in itself, was enough. Edvin's pulse raced, the air around them charged with something undeniably magnetic. Emery stood before him, her usual guardedness momentarily swept away. The last few days had been filled with quiet moments, the tension between them thick but unspoken. Yet tonight, as the stars flickered above them, something shifted. The space between them no longer felt like a barrier. It felt like an invitation. Emery had always been elusive, her past a shadow she could not shake. And Edvin, though human, had slowly learned to see past her tough exterior to the vulnerability beneath. The moments they shared had been small but intimate, stolen glances, the softness in her touch, the unspoken understanding that neither of them could ignore. Tonight, however, felt different. The pulse of the moment seemed to hum louder, as if it was calling to them both. "Edvin," Emery said softly, her voice carrying the weight of unspoken things. She shifted slightly, her eyes meeting his. There was something new there, a glimmer of longing mingled with hesitation. "I don't know what this is, what we are." He took a step forward, closing the distance between them just a little. "I don't have all the answers either, Emery," he replied, his voice steady but his heart racing in his chest. "But I know I want to find out with you." Her lips parted, a mixture of doubt and desire crossing her features. She was still unsure, still wrestling with the weight of her past and the fear of what her heart might be pushing her toward. It was clear in the way she hesitated, the way she seemed torn between the woman she wanted to be and the woman she had been forced to become. "I'm not like you," she whispered, her eyes flickering with conflict. "I can't pretend to be. You have emotions, you have choices. I never did. I was made to obey." Edvin's heart ached for her. The words she spoke were the same ones that had haunted her since the day they first met, the same ones that kept her from letting herself truly feel. The weight of her conditioning, the years of being treated as nothing more than an object, had shaped her into someone who couldn't imagine love as anything but a weakness, a dangerous indulgence. "I don't see you that way, Emery," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "A promise. You're not an object. You're not something I can possess or control. You're a person, with your own strength, your own desires. And I care about you. Not because of what you can do for me, but because of who you are." Her eyes flickered, the battle raging within her clearly visible. There was a war being fought beneath the surface of her guarded exterior, one that she was struggling to lose. She had always been the one in control, the one who kept others at arm's length. But here, in Edvin's presence, all of that control seemed to slip away. Slowly, gently, but undeniably. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said, her voice trembling just slightly, betraying the vulnerability she tried to suppress. "I don't know if I can let you in." Edvin reached for her hand, his fingers brushing gently against her skin, as if testing her boundaries. "You don't have to trust me all at once. I'm not asking for all of you right now. I'm asking for you to take a chance, to let me show you that we can be something more." Emery's breath caught, and for a moment, she simply stood there, eyes locked with his. It was as if she were seeing him for the first time, not as a human, not as someone she was forced to tolerate, but as someone who truly understood her, someone who would stand by her no matter what. "You make me feel things I don't know how to deal with," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent my whole life fighting against feeling anything, but when I'm with you, I can't ignore it. I can't fight it." Edvin's heart swelled at her confession. The walls she had spent so long building were finally starting to crack, letting in the light of something real, something that could change everything between them. "You don't have to fight it, Emery," he whispered, his voice steady and sure. "You don't have to fight us." And with that, something inside her finally broke free. Her hands trembled as she reached for him, her touch tentative but determined. Slowly, she closed the distance between them, her breath mingling with his. The moment they had been dancing around for so long was finally here. Neither of them could deny it any longer. "Edvin," she whispered, her voice trembling with need, with desire that she had fought so hard to suppress. And then, for the first time, she kissed him, not out of obligation, not as a part of some twisted dance, but because she wanted to. Her lips were soft but insistent, tentative but hungry, as though she were learning what it meant to love. Edvin kissed her back with the same fervor, the same need, feeling the years of emotional distance between them crumble with every passing second. When they finally pulled away, both were breathless, their bodies still pressed together as though neither could bear to let go. Emery's eyes were wide, her chest rising and falling with each shallow breath, as if she had just woken from a dream. But the truth was undeniable now. This wasn't a dream. It was real. And it was happening. "I don't know what the future holds," Edvin murmured, his voice low and sincere. "But I know I want to face it with you. I want to be with you, Emery." She smiled softly, her eyes still clouded with uncertainty. But there was something more in them now. Something hopeful. Maybe I could learn to let you in," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And in that moment, under the vast expanse of stars, with the weight of their pasts behind them, they both understood that this was only the beginning. The path ahead would not be easy. It would be full of obstacles, of doubts, of moments where they would question if they could truly bridge the gap between their worlds. But for now, they had each other, and that was enough.